7 signs you're a translator between angelic and demonic realms. Have you ever felt like you were born between two worlds, never fully belonging to the light, yet never succumbing to the darkness? Like you're straddling a line so thin, so invisible, that most people never even realize it exists. I have. And I believe if you're here watching this, then maybe, just maybe, you have too. Let me tell you something strange. Not long ago, I sat in silence for 7 days in a forgotten monastery in the Himalayas. No food, no phone, no sound. Just me, the mountain wind, and the weight of something ancient pressing against my soul. On the 3rd night, I had a vision not of angels singing or demons screaming, but of a bridge between two realms. One side shimmered in divine light, the other churned in restless shadow. And in the middle I stood, alone, watching both, hearing both, translating both. That's when I realized some of us were never meant to pick a side. We were meant to be the bridge.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
If you're still with me, it means something in you resonates with that image. Maybe you've always been the one others come to when they're in pain, when they're lost, when they're on the edge of something they don't understand. Maybe you felt energies in a room shift before anyone else knew what was happening. Maybe you've heard whispers when no one was there, neither frightening nor comforting, just present. If you felt that, you might be a translator between angelic and demonic realms. And no, this isn't metaphor. This isn't fantasy. This is spiritual reality, one that is far more complex than light versus dark. The first sign is that you feel everything, not like an empath who simply absorbs emotion, but like a conduit. You don't just feel sadness, you feel where it comes from, where it's going, and how it wants to be expressed. You don't just sense joy, you understand its roots, its fragility, its divine pulse. It's as if you were born with antennas that reach into dimensions others don't know exist. But this gift isn't always a blessing. It can be overwhelming, terrifying even. Because when you feel everything, you also feel them, the entities that whisper behind the veil. Have you ever woken up at 3:33 a.m. with no explanation, heart racing, room thick with presence? That's not your imagination. That's your soul receiving a transmission from the in-between. And you're the decoder. But here's where it gets deeper. You don't just feel both realms, you understand them, even when you don't want to. You can hear the logic in darkness and the paradox in light. You know that demons don't always come with horns, and angels don't always come with wings. Sometimes darkness wears a smile. Sometimes light burns so brightly it blinds. You see through it all. You translate their messages not just for yourself, but for others. You guide people through paths they didn't know existed, sometimes through prayer, sometimes through presence, sometimes through silence. You're the unseen counselor, the spiritual technician tuning the frequencies of souls. And yet it's not glamorous. It's lonely. Because who do you talk to about this? Who can understand that you feel celestial joy one moment and crushing despair the next, not because of mood swings or trauma, but because you're receiving signals from realities that overlap this one? You walk into a room and feel the residue of ancient arguments. You sleep and dream of places you've never been, yet know intimately. You hear songs no one else can hear, and sometimes you cry without knowing why. Because when you're a translator, you're also a vessel, and vessels must be empty to stay clear. Have you ever questioned whether you're going crazy? That's another sign. Because spiritual translators often dance on the edge of madness, not because they're insane, but because they're too sane in a world that's deeply asleep. When you see what others deny, when you hear what others silence, when you feel what others numb out, the weight can crush you. Unless you learn to alchemize it. Unless you learn to transmit instead of absorb. That's the key. You're not here to carry the weight of both realms. You're here to communicate between them. And let me tell you something wild, sometimes the demonic realm reaches out to you first. Not because you're evil, but because you're capable. Because they know you won't flinch. Because they know you can look into the abyss and not lose yourself. That's power. But it's also a test. Every message you receive must be filtered through integrity, through discernment. Because not everything that speaks deserves a response. The greatest translators are not those who speak the most, but those who listen the deepest. Now I have to ask you, what language do you dream in? What symbols show up in your meditations? Have you ever had the same number, the same animal, the same phrase repeat itself across days or weeks? That's not coincidence. That's communication. And your role is to decode it for yourself, yes, but also for those who never learned the language of the unseen. You are the bridge. You are the interpreter. You are the one who walks between prayer and possession, between halo and shadow, not to choose a side, but to hold space for both. And here's something most people won't tell you. Sometimes being a translator means being misunderstood. People will think you're too dark to be holy and too spiritual to be real. You'll be too intense for the light workers and too awake for the skeptics. You'll feel like an orphan of paradigms. But that's the price of being a bridge. You're not meant to settle on one shore. You're meant to stretch across the chasm so others can cross. So others can understand what was never meant to be spoken. But here's the sacred paradox. In translating for others, you begin to understand yourself. Every message you interpret peels back another layer of your own soul. Every shadow you meet in others reflects a shadow you're ready to integrate. Every angelic whisper you translate for someone else is an echo of the divine calling inside you. This isn't just a role, it's an initiation, a lifelong one. And if you're truly called to it, you'll know. You won't be able to turn it off. The messages will keep coming. The dreams will intensify. The patterns will repeat. Until you finally say, yes, I hear you, I accept. But before we continue, I want to leave you with one question, one that could change everything. What if the reason you've always felt too much is because you were never meant to fit inside the limits of human experience? What if you were meant to translate it, to transcend it, to bridge it? If that question stirred something in you, wait until you hear what comes next. The soul's frequency, why you hear what others can. There's a sound beneath sound. A frequency so ancient, so subtle, that it doesn't move through the ears, it moves through the bones, the blood, the soul. And if you're a translator between angelic and demonic realms, you've been hearing it your entire life. Not with your physical senses, but with something deeper, your spiritual resonance. You see, the soul has a frequency, and it's not static. It shifts depending on where your awareness goes, what energy you allow in, and how aligned you are with your purpose. Most people never hear this frequency because they've numbed themselves to stillness. But you, if you're watching this, it means your internal dial is already tuned to something beyond this dimension. From an early age, you probably noticed things others missed. You sensed when someone's smile didn't match their energy. You heard the tension in a room where everyone was pretending to be fine. You felt the pull of something invisible when you stood at certain places, ancient trees, sacred ruins, old churches, even abandoned buildings. That wasn't your imagination. That was your soul's frequency picking up transmissions not meant for ordinary ears. And those transmissions weren't random. They were invitations. Invitations to remember who you are. Let me explain something that most spiritual teachers won't tell you. Angels and demons are not just beings, they are frequencies of consciousness. When you feel overwhelming peace drop into your body during meditation, that's an angelic frequency. When you feel rage or despair rise up and try to take control, that's a demonic frequency. These aren't just external entities, they are energetic signatures you've become attuned to. Translators don't just hear words, they feel vibrations. They sense intent. They decode meaning behind the veil of emotion. That's why you can walk into chaos and somehow understand what needs to be done what needs to be said, what needs to be healed. You're translating raw energy into tangible action. But here's the deeper truth. You didn't learn this. You remembered it. This ability to hear what others can't is a soul imprint. It means you've done this before, maybe in another lifetime, maybe in another dimension. You've stood at the crossroads between realms and acted as the voice between them. That's why you're so sensitive now. That's why you can't ignore the energies others pretend don't exist. You've been initiated in silence. You've been trained by suffering, awakened by solitude, sharpened by shadow. And now, your soul's frequency is tuned so finely that even the subtlest whisper from the other side gets your attention. But with great sensitivity comes responsibility. Because once you start understanding what you're hearing, you can't unhear it. You'll realize that certain thoughts in your mind weren't yours. Certain dreams weren't just dreams. Certain encounters were orchestrated. That moment when you felt like someone or something was guiding you, protecting you, warning you. It wasn't a coincidence. You were hearing a frequency that others around you couldn't pick up. And the more you align with your soul's purpose, the clearer that frequency becomes. But I have to warn you. Clarity isn't always comfortable. When you hear what others can't, you will often feel what others won't. You'll carry the burden of knowing. You'll see the truth behind people's masks. You'll feel the pain they're hiding, the trauma they're avoiding, the spirits they're entertaining. And sometimes you'll feel the pull of darkness try to seduce you, not because you're weak, but because you're powerful. Because the demonic realm knows that if it can distort your frequency, it can block the messages you're meant to deliver. That's why protecting your energy isn't optional, it's sacred discipline. How do you protect your frequency? Through conscious ritual, through silence, through nature, through truth, through refusing to be baited into fear or fantasy, through choosing presence over performance. Every day, you are either tuning your soul closer to divine clarity or letting distortion creep in. And that's why spiritual hygiene for translators is non-negotiable. You cannot afford to carry energetic static if you're meant to be a clear channel for multidimensional communication. Now let me ask you something deep. Something that might shake you. What if every time you ignored that subtle internal pull, the voice, the nudge, the energetic shift, you were actually denying a message meant for someone else? What if your sensitivity isn't about you at all, but about the souls depending on you to deliver what only you can hear? Think about that. Let it sink in. You are not just sensitive, you are significant. You are not just intuitive, you are entrusted. You're not here to be normal, you're here to be attuned. The shadow contract, why darkness trusts you too. There's something we don't talk about enough in the spiritual community. We glamorize the light. We chase ascension. We romanticize being high vibration. But few are willing to sit in the truth that the darkness is not just something to be banished, it's something that trusts you. Yes, you heard that right. If you're a translator between angelic and demonic realms, then you've likely been approached, tested, even trusted by the shadow itself. And that's not because you're weak or impure. It's because you're capable of holding it without collapsing into it. You see, darkness doesn't approach just anyone. It watches. It waits. It sees who can stand in the fire without trying to snuff it out or fan it into chaos. It's not looking for fear, it's looking for witnesses. Translators are not warriors in the sense of slaying demons or casting out spirits. Translators are observers of deep energetic contracts. We don't fight shadow, we understand it. We listen to it. We ask it what it wants. And often what it wants is not destruction, it wants acknowledgement. Have you ever noticed that the more you try to suppress a dark thought or feeling, the louder it becomes? That's because shadow isn't asking to be erased, it's asking to be translated. There was a time in my life when I was haunted by what I can only describe as a presence, something ancient, heavy, and cold. No matter how much light I summoned, no matter how much I meditated or prayed, It stayed. I thought I was under attack. I thought I had failed spiritually. But then something inside me shifted. Instead of resisting it, I asked it, "What are you here to teach me?" And in that moment, the energy didn't vanish, it transformed. It shifted from terror to clarity. It told me it had been following me not to harm me, but to train me. That's when I realized some darkness doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to initiate you. Many of us have signed shadow contracts, agreements made on the soul level before we were born. Agreements that we would walk into the darkest places of the psyche, the family line, the collective unconscious, not to get stuck there, but to interpret what has long been buried. You might have noticed this in your own life. Patterns of depression, addiction, ancestral trauma, or inexplicable fear. These aren't just personal struggles. They're assignments. And you're not cursed. You're entrusted. You're the one in your lineage who could face what others denied. You're the one who could go into the underworld and bring back the language of healing. Now, let me say this clearly. This does not mean you should romanticize suffering. Pain is not a badge of honor. Darkness is not a playground. It's a sacred terrain that requires respect, boundaries, and discernment. Translating the shadow doesn't mean embracing it blindly. It means deciphering its messages without letting it hijack your soul. It means sitting with the demon of shame and asking it who it's really protecting. It means hearing the whisper of fear and asking what truth it's trying to guard. It means walking through the valley of death and realizing that death, too, speaks a language of transformation. And here's the paradox that no one wants to admit. Darkness trusts you because it knows you won't flinch. It knows you won't exploit it for power or deny it out of fear. It knows you'll listen deeply, speak honestly, and act with integrity. That's rare, and that's why you've likely been tested more than most, because your soul agreed to something most people never even knew was an option. So now I ask you, what if the reason you've experienced so much darkness isn't because you're broken, but because you're one of the few who can carry its message without being consumed by it? What if the shadows of your life were never punishments, but encrypted messages waiting for your translation? Think about it. Every time you faced a fear and translated it into courage, every time you met grief and translated it into compassion, every time you looked at a wound and translated it into wisdom, you fulfilled your contract. You became the bridge, not just between dimensions, but between despair and deliverance. You are not a victim of darkness. You are a linguist of its codes. You are not a prisoner of shadow. You are the scribe of its secrets. You are not here to destroy evil. You are here to decode its origins and awaken the soul's true choice. The final transmission, becoming the voice between worlds. There comes a moment in every translator's journey when the transmissions become clear, not louder, not more dramatic, but cleaner, sharper. As if the veil between realms thinned just enough for a voice, not your own, to rise from deep within your chest. It doesn't speak in words. It speaks in knowing. And that's when you realize you're no longer just translating messages from angelic or demonic sources. You have become the message itself. To be the voice between worlds is not about performance or charisma. It's not about telling people what they want to hear or dressing up your intuition in poetic language. It's about embodying the truth that you are a living frequency, that every step you take, every breath you draw, every silence you hold is a broadcast. You don't need to convince anyone of your spiritual gifts. Your presence is the proof. Your clarity is the confirmation. Your peace is the portal. But this is where the responsibility deepens. Because once you become the voice, you no longer get to hide behind your fear. You no longer get to pretend you don't know what you know. You can't chalk it up to coincidence when your body warns you of danger, when a dream reveals someone's secret, or when you feel the shift in someone's spirit before they say a word. Your intuition doesn't whisper anymore, it commands. And ignoring it becomes a form of betrayal, not just to yourself, but to the sacred role you've been given. You see, this isn't just about serving others. It's about serving truth. Sometimes the truth will come in angelic forms, soft, luminous, affirming. Other times it will come from the demonic depths, sharp, disruptive, unrelenting. But both are necessary. Both are real. The translator's gift is in how we deliver the message. We don't sugarcoat. We don't dramatize. We transmit with reverence, with neutrality, with fierce devotion to clarity. You might find that people begin to come to you without knowing why. Strangers opening up their soul's wounds within minutes of meeting you. Friends confessing things they've never spoken aloud. You'll notice how your presence becomes a mirror, one that reflects both the divine and the distorted in others. And when that happens, remember, this isn't about being a savior. You're not here to fix anyone. You're here to translate, to offer language for what others can't yet name, to open doors, not drag people through them. Something else happens when you fully step into this role. You begin to trust yourself in a way that transcends logic. You stop second-guessing. You stop outsourcing your wisdom. You stop needing signs every 5 minutes because you become the sign. The voice that once came from outside now echoes from within. You hear the angelic realm in your heartbeat. You hear the demonic realm in your shadow. And you see that both are part of the same divine intelligence working not against you, but through you. But I must leave you with one final truth, perhaps the most important transmission of all. You were never meant to belong fully to either realm. That ache you've always felt, that sense of being in between, of never quite fitting into the light or the dark, the normal or the mystical, that's not a flaw. That's the mark of a translator. You were designed to dwell in the liminal, to stand in the doorway with one hand in each world, not to split yourself, but to complete the circuit, to allow the divine current to flow through you, from above to below, from shadow to soul. So I ask you, as we close this journey together, what if your entire life has been preparing you for this? What if every heartbreak, every vision, every sleepless night was a piece of your training? What if you were never lost, just listening to a language no one else could hear yet? You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not imagining things. You are the voice between worlds. And now, it's time to speak.